Hi everyone! Welcome to a new video. I'm going to be showing you guys all the tools you need to get started with sewing, my go-to products for a thrift flip, and what tools I use during sewing. Before we get into the video, don't forget to follow my TikTok. I'm most active on there, but other than that, let's just get started. Now, these two are a little bit more obvious and self-explanatory. Pins. I don't know why I said pins, these are clips. I use the clips more for holding two pieces of fabric together, like if I'm just sewing the back side to the front side. But pins, since they can pierce through the fabric, I usually like to use them when I'm trying to sew something on top of the other, like a lace trim, patches, and stuff like that. Pins and clips basically have the same use, but it really just depends on the project that you're working on. But for pins, I do really recommend getting a pin cushion. Making your own pin cushion is also a really easy sewing project. Obviously, you can push the pin through the cushion and still stab yourself, but if you're putting the pins in correctly, it's a lot easier to avoid injuries compared to keeping all your pins in box and poking yourself every time you try to get one. For pin cushions, I do recommend getting a bigger one. I've been meaning to get a bigger one, but I've also been wanting to sew my own, so maybe that'll be a new video. Next, it's really important to have good quality fabric scissors. I'm not gonna lie, these aren't really good quality, but they do the job, and fabric scissors really make all the difference. Regular craft scissors aren't going to cut the same way fabric scissors do, and fabric scissors cut a lot cleaner in general and cut through fabric a lot easier. Especially if you're working with a bunch of different types of materials, fabric scissors are going to come in really handy because thicker materials like denim are going to be harder to cut through, and the fabric scissors are just going to make it a lot easier than if you were using regular scissors. I also have a rotary cutter. It's easier to cut through multiple layers of fabric and have cleaner cuts. If you have a good quality rotary cutter, then you might find those a lot easier to use than regular fabric scissors. Something I've been really wanting to get are electric scissors. I've seen these all over the internet, and people cut through multiple layers of fabric with these scissors with so much ease, and the cuts turn out really precise. So I'm definitely gonna upgrade to electric scissors very soon. But for beginners, there's nothing wrong with some simple fabric scissors. I cannot sew anything without messing up like at least once. So this is my holy grail. This is just a seam ripper. The seam rippers are usually going to come as part of your sewing machine. These seam rippers are really helpful when it comes to sewing. If I ever mess up, I'll just use the seam ripper to rip the seam and redo those stitches. If I sew the wrong piece of fabric to another piece, I can easily just seam rip it and start over. This is a seam ripper that I have from my last sewing machine. Usually when you're buying a brand new sewing machine, it comes with some sort of accessories. A lot of seam rippers will come with a little ball at the end of the shorter bar of the seam ripper just to protect the fabric. A lot of times you can tear holes into your fabric if you're not careful enough with the seam ripper. I personally have never had to buy a seam ripper just because they always come with my sewing machine. They're usually attached to this brush that helps clean your machine, which is also something so important. It's really important to keep up with your machine maintenance and stuff so your machine keeps on running smoothly. I usually use chalk. Tailor's chalk is really useful for sewing projects. I like to get a pack of different colors just so I can make sure that my lines are visible depending on the color of the fabric. Obviously, if you're using the red against a red fabric, it's not going to be as visible, so I like to have different colors for that reason. Like I said, a lot of these are going to be really self-explanatory, so the chalk is obviously just going to be for marking stuff on your fabric. It doesn't have to be chalk though. I've also seen people get like disappearing ink pens, washable marking pens. Tailor's chalk is also washable, so I don't have to worry about it staining or staying on my fabric. Using the chalk to mark my fabric makes everything a lot easier, and it lets me visualize everything better since I see the markings on my fabric. Rulers are something I use in every sewing project too, just to ensure that all my lines are clean. That way I have a clear guideline of where I'm gonna cut. Rulers just make everything a lot more easy and precise. It basically just leaves less room for error. Having thread is obviously something that you need for sewing, but I like to keep different colors on hand just so I can make sure that my thread matches my fabric. That way my stitches are less noticeable. Having different colored threads and having it stand out against your garment is a really cute detail to add, but usually when it comes to regular seams, I like to have my thread color match just so the seams are more concealed. Using different types of needles is also something that's really useful just because using the right needle for your fabric is going to make it a lot easier in most cases to sew. Like denim or heavy duty needles be a lot easier to sew through denim and those thicker materials if you have the right needle. Especially when it comes to thinner fabrics or stretchy fabrics, having a stretchy or like a ballpoint needle, it'll make it a lot easier to sew. Or I would be using like universal needles, which is completely fine, but I would notice that using my universal needle on a stretchy fabric would make it jam in my machine a lot more frequently. This might be one that's a little bit more unconventional. I don't really hear a lot of people talking about this in terms of like sewing supplies, but I always keep a pair of tweezers by my sewing machine just in case something gets jammed. My nails are at a length where it's not really easy to pick things up, so these tweezers are really useful. When it comes to cleaning my sewing machine, every time there's like thread jammed in there, thread in places that are a little more harder to reach, these tweezers come in really handy in making sure that the thread isn't going to get pushed further down into my sewing machine and cause even more problems. I also use the tweezers for seam ripping. When it comes to seam ripping, a lot of the thread is going to get stuck in between the holes where the needle went through. Using these tweezers makes it a lot easier for me to take out all the old thread and get everything prepared to sew the new seam. The little bow appliques you can really find anywhere. I know Amazon sells like a lot of different kinds. Same thing for my rhinestone pen. You can buy them off of Amazon, and I'm pretty sure it comes with like a whole kit. I like to get a lot of my lace from Surge Fabric Shop. They have a wide selection of elastic lace. They're also a family-owned business, which is really nice. Mood Fabrics also has a lot of cute lace appliques and just a wide section of fabric overall. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to follow my socials. Stay tuned for new videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!